Hi guys, Megan here. Thank you so much for the questions. They were all great. Some were remarkably relevant to the historic times we're living through. So that was very refreshing to see. So I'm just going to dive right in. The first question is from Bali. Why did you start learning to play piano? Why did I start learning? My mom did the UNISA graded exams up to I think grade 5, 6, and she did very well. Um, and so she had these music books just lying around in the house. So I sort of started reading through them, and she eventually started guiding me through the books because I showed her interest in it. And then she decided to formally start teaching me piano, what she learned and so forth. Um, I also learned to sing in choir in church. We had we had to read parts, so soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and that started teaching me how music reading in a way works. And eventually she took me to audition at the conservatory in Stellenbosch, and the teacher there, Mario, now accepted me, and things escalated in a good way from there. That's why I started in a way completely by chance. The second question is what motivated you to keep going when you felt it was tough? Yeah, that's an excellent question because in the musician world, it's quite harsh, and you in a way have to overcome a lot of barriers, and it's a tough career. You have to have um, a lot of courage and guts to keep going at it because um, there are a lot of musicians out there, and it takes a lot to sustain the career. And what keeps me going is just I think my love for it, my keen interest in music, and um, from the very beginning, I really enjoyed just the craftiness of it, studying it, practicing. I did enjoy practicing and so on. And then I really enjoy being around artists, being around musicians, and that sort of keeps me there. Because fellow musicians and artists always have really, to me, really interesting topics to talk about, so and relevant to my career. So I surround myself with musicians and so on. The third question: do you think you'll play piano for the rest of your life, or do you plan to stop when you are older? Um, I mean, I studied many years to play piano, so I think I'll be doing that for the rest of my life. As musicians, we are lucky in the sense that you don't really retire. I want to say almost ever. You keep if you're lucky enough to have um, to have your ability, because sometimes your ability does deplete after a while just because of the amount of work you put in. It's injuries and so forth that happens. That has happened to me, having an injury for a while that you can't practice or play. So that does happen. But we make music until late into our life, 60, 70. There was a pianist that played his last concert when he was 92, and it was on a really high level. You wouldn't, if you didn't see the person, you wouldn't know that that person was 92. So we keep making music until very late in our lives. Good question. The fourth question: if you weren't a pianist, what would you be? Uh, that's really tough. It's difficult to imagine my life without music or music in it. Maybe sports. My dad was a rugby coach and so forth, big into sports, athletics and so forth. I think that would have been something that would have interested me. Um, I sort of during high school, primary school also a little. I started already having a sort of a concert career, and my parents and my teachers, in a way, banned me from doing any sports. So and I really, it was actually a little sad because I did really enjoy the activities, sport activities. Um, I tried athletics because that's safe for the hands, um, but I wasn't really good at that. But like for instance, cricket, rugby, I really loved. But cricket is not good for your hands. You can easily injure your finger, and that's not something you want to happen to you when you're trying to make a career as a pianist, or just to sustain a career as a pianist. So yeah, probably something in sport. Yeah. Then Bali's last question: how do you find the American classical music scene compared to South Africa? In a way, they are very similar because the the types of classical musics that are being played is quite wide. I find that South Africa in a way is more vibrant because we are crossing over much more these days from classical music to other styles, say jazz or whatever. Um, where I didn't see that so much in America. You would have a classical pianist, or you have a jazz pianist, or a rapper, or whatever. But in South Africa, I'm starting to see that the styles are, and myself, seeing the styles are crossing over much more than what you would see in a country such as America. Um, the level of playing classical music wise is very high. So it's a very intense space to be. I studied there for many years, and it was a very intense space to be in. I learned a lot. I improved so much as a musician. Um, and yeah, in South Africa's level is also very high, but I remember learning very much, learning a lot from the American classical scene. Okay, so that was in Bali. Moving on to Kanyi. She wants to know, how were you spending your time when you were our age? What were you listening to? Where were you performing? And what were your ambitions? So our age, that's 14, I guess. Teenager. I was, at that point in my career, I was playing some concerts. I was fortunate to win some competitions when I was younger. So that sort of propelled me towards uh, a mini career, I would say, in classical music. What kind of music I was listening to? I was listening to all sorts. I was at the time like 14, 15, high school. I was living in Rees in Stellenbosch High, and there was music all over the place because the rooms are next to each other. So you're hearing a lot of different music. Um, I think I really enjoyed from jazz to, I want to say, even heavy metal, melodic metal. Um, I don't know if I was listening to classical music a lot because I was practicing it and playing it all the time. I wasn't necessarily, I think, listening to it. I was listening to all sorts of other music other than classical music. Um, I'm saying that now because now these days I find myself listening a lot to classical music because I constantly have to uh, make programs and so forth, give my opinions about what music fits where or whatever. So I have to listen to a lot of classical music to have the full picture. So I listen to much more classical music at the moment. Then second question by Kanye. Did you always feel like music was the right fit for you? Uh, I think so. Um, there was a junior competition that I did in primary school, and I remember I won, not, or I got the prize for most promising candidate in the competition. I didn't win or didn't go to the final or something, but most promising, and that sort of gave me. Firstly, like I said, I enjoy practicing and I enjoy um, spending time at the piano. Um, but that prize, I remember, gave me a lot. It propelled me towards a career because it felt like it felt like there was a possibility there. And even I don't think it was maybe consciously, but thinking back now, um, I did sort of feel that, even though I wasn't aware that that because at that age I didn't know that there's a career, like a career in music. It was an alien thought. It wasn't even a thought, but it sort of kept me close to classical music, close to the piano, like keep at it, that sort of feeling. So I guess in a way, unconsciously, it always felt like the right fit for me. Third question: do you feel any pressure on your shoulders by representing South Africa? Uh, Very good question. Uh, at the moment, I would say no. Not pressure in the sense that you feel under pressure because you have to represent South Africa in a very good way. I would say more pride, because we have a very vibrant, very active music scene, and it's very I'm very proud to be part of 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 that, of showing the world that. When I used to do, well, not long ago, but when I do international competitions, then then you sort of, especially international competitions in South Africa, then you do feel a pressure, the national pressure of South Africa, because you're performing in front of people that know you. You're performing in front of your teachers. This is now in the international competition. Um, you in South Africa. You're playing in front of your teachers, your friends, your peers. So in that sense, it really feels like you're presenting the South Africa as a music scene in a way. Even though I don't even think that's true, but that's how it feels. But at the moment, I don't feel any pressure of presenting South Africa. It's more for pride. Then we have Antiswa asking, from your perspective, maybe a few decades from now, do you think the classical genre will still be valid? Classical genre, I'm thinking I'm going to narrow it down to South Africa. I definitely think it will be valid. Um, I just think that the classical music scene should probably stay sensitive and open to change, because it's very easy for classical musicians to get stuck with music that was written pre 1950. Like the standard Beethoven, Mozart, Bach. But there are amazing works that has been written recently, and even in the time of Beethoven and Mozart, or pieces that haven't been played very often. Amazing. I'm not saying Mozart and Beethoven they aren't great. I'm saying there were also others. Um, in terms of music that I've played recently that was really refreshing, there's Arthur Feder wrote me a work called Finding Being, and he incorporated elements of South African musics such as Guma and so forth into the piece that I performed. So as long as classical music stays open to these influences, it will definitely stay valid. Yeah, very good question. How do you cope with a disinterested or disrespectful audience? That's a very good question, because I have had concerts where you were specifically asked to play in this space, say a museum or whatever, and you can sense that your your brand isn't, in a way, I don't want to say welcome, but relevant in the space. The people have to, so in a way, in the time, get used to what you present, and in that case, you just stick to, you just keep playing, and that's what I do. That you just keep playing, um, and I've found ways to make an audience listen. And what usually works for me is if you say you play a really loud sound in the piece, you play a really loud sound, maybe a couple even, so that the oral senses are overwhelmed with a lot of sound, and then you break the sound down to almost nothing. So silence, and then you make the audience come closer and try to hear really what is going on, and sort of, and by playing a lot of maybe uncomfortable concerts, I've learned that that's something that works. So in a way, you you make the audience listen. Then he asks, "Do you have a favorite French composer?" Um, I'm going to assume that's French in the classical music sense. Uh, I think I like different things from different composers. So Maurice Ravel, Debussy, Fauré, Saint-Saëns. I mean, there are so many, and they all have the unique thing that makes them special. What I like about Ravel is his way of keeping a piece together with one element that sort of binds the whole piece together. Like this bolero they wrote, that the whole piece is bound together with this tuck 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 of the snare drum that goes throughout the piece, and you have different melodies, and they all layered slightly higher than the others. Yeah, so I think they called him the Swiss clockmaker or something like that. So he has a very nuanced way of binding the piece together with something really specific that is pervasive throughout the movement. Then the last question is, can you recommend any French piano or chamber music to listen to? Yes, there is a piece called Gaspard de la Nuit by Ravel for piano. It's based on 3 poems. The third poem is very scary. Playing the piano part to that is even scarier. In fact, it was written to be the most difficult piece on piano at the time. Can't remember the year now, but Ravel wrote this Gaspard de la Nuit to be the most difficult piece in the world. And then there's also La Mer for orchestra by Debussy. La Mer is the sea, and it's amazing how he creates these soundscapes that reflects the sea or water, if you will, in the orchestra, and the orchestration is just amazing as well. The different instruments he combines with cello and horn, or oboe and violin, or so. Yeah, yeah. Chamber music. There's a Ravel wrote a beautiful quartet, string quartet. He wrote an amazing piano trio. Such exciting music. The Ravel piano trio. Yeah, great questions. Last week, Kagile asking, do you enjoy music outside of the classical genre? And what do you listen to? Oh yeah, well, like I said, at the moment I'm listening to a lot of classical music because it's part of just the job. I have to assign, pieces to students. I have to assign or compile programs and assess programs. So there's a lot of thought going into various classical musics. But I really enjoy listening to jazz, specifically South African jazz. I saw Carl Shepard made a video for you, so I really enjoy listening to him play. Yeah, South African jazz. I also enjoy Keith Jarrett, Brad Maldau, American jazz pianists. And then there's a French Middle Eastern trumpeter called Ibrahim Malouf. Also wrote or creates interesting music, and he combines different music like he took a song by Michael Jackson and warped it into uh, brassy, march-like music. So yeah, it's just very interesting way of mixing various musics together. Ibrahim Alouf. Then the last question is: have you tried to play any other genres or styles? Not on stage, not in public. If I would say, I like to improvise because it just teaches you a lot of how music is composed, because you start to understand the in a way the process, like what the process was the composer had to go through, how they figured out um, the the germ or the fragment of the work they're writing, song they're writing, and how they develop that. So improvisation is a real fun activity, especially when you're warming up in the beginning of a session before you start practicing. Just starting to make sounds, and you'll as you do it, I don't know if you guys, maybe you do it, but you'll find that you have certain six things or licks that you hang on to. Um, as you improvise. So you can send yourself a parameter like improvise for 2 minutes and see what you come up with, and you'll find that you can start with this one sound and sort of expand it like that. But I don't think I've done enough hard work in playing other styles to present it on stage or in public, because improvisation, so something like I'm just using improvisation now, but because it's not really a thing that you do in classical music. But something like improvisation takes a long time to be good at. So you really have to um, have the ability to respect it and practice it for many years, or yeah, many years, to present it to the public. Yeah, and then I played in a church in America at some point where I was accompanying this choir and singer in a way, and I had to improvise. I had to improvise according to what they wanted um, on the spot. So I would have the sheet music in front of me, or a chord chart or whatever, and then the choir lady would scream at me chaka chaka, and then I would have to arrange the chord chart in semiquavers or some sort of swing or whatever. Um, so that's, I guess, maybe that was public, but it wasn't really public because it was more of I was part of the whole system that presented this other genre than classical music. Yeah, thank you so much for your questions. I really enjoyed answering them and thinking about them. They really made me think. Yeah, bye bye.